Good boy. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be installing a new front sight on this Smith & Wesson Model 19 Classic. You've seen this revolver before. I took it down, broke it down, and showed you some of the refinements that Smith & Wesson has made with their Model 19. It's quite a different gun. This has got a shrouded barrel. The barrel, as a matter of fact, is almost identical in conformation to my old Smith & Wesson Model 10 M&P, Military and Police, that I carried as a young officer. Of course, this has got the raised Bowman sight, which conforms to the higher adjustable rear sight, and so that Bowman sight is on a ramp, and within the ramp is the pinned front sight. Now, I sometimes see people say that their Smith & Wesson is the one that doesn't have a pin in it, and they all have pins. The pins are very beautifully concealed by some nice grinding and polishing and bluing afterwards, but there is a pin there. To my knowledge, Smith & Wesson has always pinned the front sights, and they're always removable. You know, you may not be able to remove some of them without disfiguring the steel, but they are removable. But anyway, this particular sight here has got a pin which is a roll pin. It's a different sort of pin than was previously used in Smith & Wesson designs. A roll pin has many advantages. For one thing, it has its own tension. It's a little bit larger in diameter than the hole into which it's forced, and therefore it resists any movement side to side. My problem with this revolver was that I ran out of downward adjustment on the rear sight. I couldn't bring my shots down any lower than with certain loads. Some loads were fine, but with some loads I just simply didn't have sufficient adjustment to bring those shots down. Now, as you know, the standard rule of thumb is you move the rear sight left and right in the direction that you wish to move your shots, and you move the rear sight up and down in the direction that you wish to move your shots. Conversely, the front sight is moved in the opposite direction. So my desire is to bring my shots down farther, so I need to raise my front sight. I measured that front sight using standard calipers as a depth gauge, and when I measured the height of that front sight, it came out to 0.230. Now, I figured that all I needed was somewhere around 40 thousandths of an inch or so of movement to bring my shots down. I didn't need to go up radically. The next convenient sight height is a .278. That gives me 48 thousandths of an inch adjustment, which is more than sufficient. And I don't want to have this rear sight go to an ungainly height where I have a big gap underneath it. It's a compact revolver, and I like to maintain that compactness without having that sight protruding too far up. So what we need to do this job is, first of all, one of the big questions is, what size is that hole? It's not a 1/16 of an inch. I see many people say, you know, simply drill it out with a 1/16 of an inch drill and, you know, put in a 1/16 of an inch roll pin that you get at your hardware store. It's way, way, way smaller than a 1/16 of an inch. Basically, it's a 50 thousandths of an inch hole. It's a little bigger. It's about, this hole measured .054. So this happens to be a number 54 wire drill. Now, wire gauge drill, number drill. You can't use a fractional drill for this. You really don't want to disfigure the gun by putting in a big big massive 1/16 of an inch drill. It's just, this drill only cost me $2.99 at my local Ace Hardware store. I got to do this right the first time, because if I break this, I'm going to have to travel a long ways in order to get another one. This is the last number 54 number drill that they had. But for $2.99, it's a pretty cheap investment. I'll use the roll pin that's in the front sight right now and carefully remove it so that I don't lose it. One of the things that will help me, I've got a pair of hemostats here. This is a handy thing for any gunsmith to have around the shop for a lot of things. I can grab a pin with that and secure it so that as I drive that, as I start driving it out, I can grasp it, and this will hang on tight, and I won't have that pin flying around where it'll be almost assuredly a real problem to find. I happen to have it's a little pin starter that I got from Smith & Wesson. Basically it's a 54 thousandths hole on the end of it, so I can put a roll pin in that. It's a little bit larger. It's about probably 55, 56 thousandths hole. So I can put a pin in that and get it started very nicely. It's made for that job. This was a 1/16 inch diameter drift pin. I simply chucked it into my drill press. You really can't find 50 thousandths of an inch drift pins very easily. It'd be crazy to pay that kind of money. So I just simply chucked this into my drill press, and I dressed it down, set it on the highest speed. I dressed it down until I had 50 thousandths of an inch. Came out beautifully, and then I honed it with, I finally honed it with a red stone, an India stone. Came out beautiful. So that will do the job of removing the sight. This one will start the new pin, and once I get it started, then I'll use my German silver, and the German silver will start that pin and drive it home without damaging the steel. Don't try to line up a drift pin on that roll pin when you go to put it back in, because if it slips off, if it's the right size and it slips off, it's going to hit your gun and it's going to scar the gun. And if it's too big, if it's oversized, it won't slide off, but you can't really get it home without having difficulty. So the piece of German silver will do a nice job without having any issues. And finally, I've got the 78 thousandths red front sight, and that's going to be my replacement. So let's get at it. Now, I've got a drill press over here, and that drill press has a Jacobs chuck on it, and I could certainly chuck in a number 54 drill bit without any trouble. But most of you probably don't have a drill press, and for me to demonstrate something on a drill press and for you not to have it, that's kind of a no-brainer. There's no way that you're going to be able to do the same job. So I'm going to show you how to do it right at your own bench using a standard hand drill. And this chuck here, I think 54 thousandths seems to be about as small as it'll go. Any smaller wire diameter than that, it wouldn't hold it. But this will chuck in a number 54 wire drill, and tightly. So that's it. And finally, you've got to have a lightweight. This is just a 4-ounce ball peen hammer, and this will do. This is more than sufficient. You can use even a lighter hammer than that. You can even use that pin. That pin comes out very easily, so you don't even need to have a hammer like that. You can use a plastic mallet. So let's step over the bench and get at it. Now, you might think this is absolutely crazy when you first see it. I'm not going to be using my plywood cauls. Matter of fact, I'm going to be doing exactly what Smith & Wesson does at their factory, and this is how they taught me how to chuck a revolver into a bench vise. Now these jaws are steel jaws, but they don't have the teeth on it. I ground the teeth off many years ago, so they're flat, smooth jaws. And this will hold that'll hold that gun absolutely solid, without sliding. And because the kind of work that we're going to be doing, we may possibly, if it was held in place with wood cauls, it could possibly slip just enough to cause an issue with that drill. First off, I'm just going to start by see if I can bring in a little bit closer here so you can see what's going on. Now you can see that's a very small hole, and it's a hollow pin. Very carefully line up and very straight. It should feel soft when you hit the right spot, so go gently until you find it. There we go. You can hear that. You can hear that sound. Watching carefully, I'm just hitting very lightly because I don't want to drive that pin straight out through. Now, I'm protruding on the other side. I'll give you a shot at that. I'm going to take my hemostats and grab hold of that on the other side here. It's always difficult to work with the camera in the way. I got that clasped tightly as I'll go. So that should hold it nice and snugly while I continue to drive it out. Hold that. Just continue to bring it out. Everything with this operation is gentle. Now, that's how small that pin is. I suggest that you set that aside safely. Leaving it in the hemostats. Now I should be able to take that out and remove that front sight. It's probably going to take, now that's got a rounded base to it, so if I take my German silver, I should be able to dislodge it. It's really snug. I'm going to get up from underneath on the other side. There we go. That's it. It's a very snug fit, so really the pin is a foolproof mechanism. Now I've noticed here, if you can see, there's a bevel. There's a bevel on the base of that front sight on both sides. I'm going to check and see if there's a bevel on the new one. That I said was a .230. This is a, I should say, this is a 278. Now this one here does not have a bevel on the base of it. So I'm going to put a bevel on the base of it because that's going to ease insertion into that slot. Make sure that you clean that slot out very good with a Q-tip. We'll do that in a moment. Now I'm using just plain mineral spirits, and clean that out thoroughly. You can see there's some blackening there. You know, that's just signs of a little bit of rust that developed since this gun was put together, and nothing serious, but there is a little bit of darkening there, so we're going to clean that out very nicely. And I'm going to finish it off with alcohol to dry it out, because alcohol will evaporate much quicker than this mineral spirits. Mineral spirits is also known as Stoddard solvent in the industry, and developed in the 1930s by a man named Stoddard. It's a tremendous invention that replaced traditional cleaners that were in use at the time, you know, kerosene-based cleaners and things of that sort that were more volatile and stinky. So this is just plain alcohol, and clean that up, dry it up nicely. That'll evaporate very quickly. You'll be able to see that dissipate. Always be careful when you're working with alcohol, because it's a fuel. It's a highly volatile fuel, and you can't see it burning. I'm going to take my Nicholson file here, nice sharp Nicholson file, and I'm going to dress this just a couple of strokes, just to allow that base to go in nicely. Now, it may look like I'm near the gun. I'm 4 inches from the gun, so there's no issue. This will prevent that front sight from catching on the groove on the keyway. Just allow it to go in a little nicer. Of course, at the factory, they have a nearby wheel that they can just touch that up with very quickly. So that's it. Now, to make this job right, I'm going to throw a little bit of Oxbow blue on that to preserve its color. That's where I touched it up. There we go. Give that about 20 or 30 seconds, that's all it needs, and that bluing will take hold. Wipe off the excess here, and I'll clean it up finally with alcohol. Always keep the cover on that Oxbow blue, because it will turn bad and oxidize, and it will lose its coloring ability. Okay, we're in good shape now, ready to put in. It's very snug. That's why they bevel the bottom of that, and that's highly recommended. Try to get it positioned right where you want, because you want to do a minimum amount of pressing on that. Get it started with your thumb, and I'm going to use the plastic mallet. Now remember, I've got a front sight insert here, so you don't want to be bashing around on that, because you'll distort that and possibly dislodge. Almost down. Now I got to check the front edge and make sure that that's flush. I'm going to walk around the other side. And if anything, the barrel itself should be somewhat proud of the front sight. I've got probably a couple of thousandths of an inch back from that leading edge of the barrel. That is in there so tightly, that's not going to require clamping. That's absolutely not going to move. And just make sure, absolutely make sure you want to put a light behind that and see that you have no gap on the back of that. We're ready to drill, folks. Now this drill bit is extremely fine wire, and it'd be very, very easy to snap. So you want to get this started. Make sure you're running on high speed. Make sure you're not kinking that drill in any way. Check and be sure that you're flat and parallel. I'm going to go backwards just for a little bit to somewhat bevel the corner of that hole, and let it feed itself into the hole, and keep an eye on it. Make sure that it's not bending. Watch the shank. Any bending of the shank is a signal that you've got issues. And also, looking from the top, make sure that you're headed toward the other hole. All right, now that I am fully in, I can speed up that drill. Check my work. Watching from the top down and also from the side to make sure that I'm not bending that bit. Keep double checking your work. There's no rush here. Even pressure on the drill. Clean out the drill hole. I'm going to put a daub of, just a drop of light cutting oil on it. I'm checking again my horizontal, and I'm watching from the top. Back it out and clean out. It's tough steel. I'm picking up very, very fine shavings. This is not fast work by any means. Every time I restart, make sure I'm looking. There's a notch on the other side that shows me where I'm headed. Hold the drill with both hands and make sure you're well braced so that you don't lean on your drill. Don't rush this project. Every now and then, apply some more oil. That sight is staying absolutely solid. It's not moving at all, so that's good. Doesn't require a clamp. Sometimes you have sights that actually float around those tracks, but this is a very well machined, matched up slot. Clean that drill frequently because you're picking up a lot of fine particles and you don't want to have that jam up inside. Allow it to flush out. We're through. Voila. Now carefully, don't rush. Keep it going as you back it out. Now we're going to clean that up very carefully. Flush those particles out. It's very, very fine. That drill bit does not hog out long strips of steel like larger bits do. So it's just a matter of patience. I don't know how long that took, but it was probably about 8 or 10 times in and out. You can see right here I've got the pin that I want to start in there. And this is my Smith & Wesson pin starter. So we're going to give that just a light wrap with a plastic mallet to get it started. Yeah, it may not be I'm going to take my hemostats because I don't trust working with such a small pin with my fingers. I'm liable to fumble it, and I don't want to order one of these. This is probably a $6 or $7 investment, one of these pins. So I'll start her in. Okay, you can see it's started in. I'm going to use the German silver now to job done. So there you have it. It's actually a pretty simple job. I know that it's a scary job. You know, anytime you're taking a drill or a file or something like that to a beautiful Smith & Wesson or any fine revolver or firearm, it's not something that you take lightly. But done with patience, and patience with a capital P. Don't bowl that fine number 54 wire gauge drill through there. It just takes time. Give it some lubrication with some oil, cutting oil, and just keep eroding that hole through. It takes very, very small chips at a time. I mean, it almost feels like cornmeal. It's very, very, very fine. So take your time going through. And one hint with this particular barrel, there's a dimple on each side right beneath the hole, and the dimple that's there is visible from the top. So when you're guiding your drill through, make sure you're pointed right toward the next dimple, and that's the way you stay on track. And as far as your elevation goes, just make sure you maintain that perfect horizontal at all times. It can be done very easily, as you can see. It can be done very easily with a hand drill. And do it on high speed. Once you get that bit started, wind your speed up high, because those small bits need to cut at high speed. And go right on through. I know some people like to go from both sides, but I prefer not to. I prefer not to work the other hole. You want to maintain the dimensions. Drills don't usually cut on their edges. It's usually a forward cutting process. But if you're in that hole too long, you can cause some erosion and widening of it. So I prefer to just go straight on through. There's less chance of grabbing your drill too, because if you do a partial cut through one side and then come back through the other side, you've created two cones, and the breaking through is where you snap those drills. It'll grab hold of the drill bit and it'll snap it. So you want to just make one clean shot through it. That's all there is to it. To all my fabulous Patreon donors that have been so faithful in supporting me, you can, if you're not a Patreon donor and if you'd like to contribute and help me out a little bit, I leave the link right here on this screen. And there's a lot more that I want to show you and share with you with all these different firearms. I'm just going to keep on working at it as time goes on. And but I thank you for support and for your viewership. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button right now and hit the bell so you know that I'm around. Thanks for watching. God bless.